Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, where we help new and beginning teachers navigate through those crazy first years of teaching so you can maintain your sanity and personal life. Here's your host, Kim Lepre.
Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kim Lepre, and this is the podcast for new and beginning teachers who don't want to just survive those first few years, but actually thrive. In my last episode, number 47, I discussed how to get better feedback from your colleagues and administrators. Now, I had a couple of you email me and told me that you actually tried this out, and just by rewording how you asked for help, it really changed the type of feedback you did receive, which happened to be more meaningful and thoughtful. So yay for that. Thank you guys. So today on episode 48, I'm going to discuss how to get feedback from your students. Now, you can almost consider your students as your customers in that they're the ones that have to sit through your lesson, participate in your activities, and prove whether or not they've learned anything. I've known some teachers who simply believe that, as long as they've covered the material, they're off the hook. And if the students didn't learn anything, well, then too bad. Now, luckily, these teachers are not the norm. I mean, as a teacher, you can't just show up to work, talk at the kids, so not really engaging with them, just talking or lecturing at them, and still expect to have a happy and fulfilling teaching career. I mean, honestly, you're going to end up facing criticism from your colleagues and administrators, and you're also going to have the ongoing frustration from seeing that your students are failing your class. You're going to think, hey, what's up with these kids? I've been teaching this and they're not getting it. What's wrong with them? And you're just going to end up being kind of bitter in terms of teaching. So we want to get feedback, not just from our colleagues, but also from our students. Now, before I dive into this episode, I wanted to say thanks to someone who left a review in Apple Podcasts. It's from Linda Belcher. And she said, "This is my first year teaching, and this podcast has helped me so much. Kim is fabulous in her delivery and messages. I truly love this podcast." And Linda, I really, really appreciate you leaving that feedback and the review. I would love it if you would email me, let me know, hey, it's me, Linda, and I'd love to send you a Teachers Need Teachers podcast sticker. And you guys, I want to be honest. So today in this particular episode, I had a really hard time getting motivated to record it. I recently had a death in the family, and it was really hard on me. And this was my daughter's first time having somebody in her life pass away. And so it was just a really tough few weeks. And I really had to motivate myself today to record this podcast. And this morning I saw this review and I was like, you know what? I got to do it. I got to record. I want to be here for you guys. I'm sure you would understand if I missed a week because of dealing with everything that you have to take care of after somebody passes away. But I wanted to show up for you guys because I can see that it's making a difference for those of you that come back every week. So I really appreciate it. Linda, thank you so much for leaving that lovely feedback. That really, really made my day. So if you feel inclined and if you have a couple of minutes to do the same on whatever device you're on, if you could leave a rating and review for this podcast, I would truly, truly appreciate it.
I'm Dr. Heather Monthe from the About the Tea and STEM podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual host. Make sure you check out the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com. And get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, today we're going to be talking about student feedback and how it does matter how students perceive your class. It really does. And I'm not saying that you should teach to entertain or handhold or coddle the kids, and that if a subject is boring to them, you should stop teaching it. But I've mentioned several times that having engaging and relevant content is so crucial. and that every activity, handout, lecture, the result should be learning and not just busy work. So in addition to having colleagues observe us and give us feedback, it's important to know the temperature and climate of your classroom. And the only way to truly know is to survey your students. A lot of teachers give end of the year surveys or, maybe even some at the semester. In the past, I've tended to just do the end of the year survey. Now, these are great because it lets you know how the students perceive your class, what it's like to be a student in your class. Because it's one thing to be standing up front, directing. It's another thing to be sitting out in those seats in your classroom in the audience. So I like to know what students found to be helpful as well as, what they wish that I would change. I recently read an article in Edutopia about getting student feedback, but instead of waiting until the end of a grading period or the end of the year, doing it on a regular basis. So this author, Ben Johnson, suggested that we ask for direct feedback after a unit or an activity. And I really like this idea because student surveys are only useful if the students remember all of the pertinent details in order to give us feedback. And how many of them can remember, what activities you did to learn a particular skill. So this means that the feedback or the survey needs to be timely and specific. You can't wait until the end of the year to ask about a unit that they studied, sometime around first semester. So I kind of liken this to attending professional development. You know how at the end of a session, the presenters often ask participants to complete a survey. And sometimes I find these difficult because I can't remember all the details and the useful bits that were presented. A lot of times it's information overload. And so if I have notes that I can refer to, or maybe they handed out an agenda for that session or any handout in general, if I have those in front of me when I'm completing the survey, I can better reflect on what I found useful and what I would have wanted to know more about. So how do we apply this to our classroom? After you teach a unit or, several lessons, maybe not a complete unit, depends on how you want to do this, you can give a quick survey asking students which activities they found to be the most helpful. But instead of asking an open question like, what did you find useful? What did you find helpful? Give them a list of the lessons, the classwork, and any other activities that you did during that unit, and then have them check off what they found to be the most useful and helpful in their learning. Then you can ask them if there was anything they liked or disliked in particular and why. So this way they don't have to remember everything that you did. They might not have known that a particular activity or station was there to help them learn how to conjugate verbs. Maybe they didn't know that this particular think, pair, share, or group activity was to help them remember how to divide fractions. But if you have a list of the activities and lessons, then you can say, okay, which one at which point did you really feel like you were really learning and understanding? You could also have them check off which activities or concepts they found to be difficult or easy, or which concepts they need more help with. If you had them raise their hands and answer that question, there's too much risk for students answering based on peer pressure. But the good thing about a survey is that students can be more honest. So those are, ongoing in real time surveys, but I don't want to discount end of the year or end of the semester surveys because they're also useful to get a sense of how students feel about your class. These are the ones that they're probably used to getting if other teachers ask for feedback, and they tend to be more general questions. So if you do decide to give these, take the responses with a grain of salt, but also take time to reflect on them. If a student writes that they think you have no control of the classroom, I don't know, could they have a valid point? If they think that you don't fairly enforce rules, then maybe that's something to think about. And of course, you have to think about the context and the student. If they hold a grudge against you, then you're just like, well, yeah, I can see why you think that. I remember when I started teaching, students would tell me that even though I was really funny and I was a fun teacher, they thought that I talked too much or went off track too often. I thought about that, and I've been working really hard to balance a little bit of humor and randomness here and there, but not to the point where it derailed the lesson. So I did really take that feedback into consideration, because if the students felt like I wasn't focused enough, well, that's kind of a problem, right? So some commonly asked questions for surveys are things like, what did you like about this class? What didn't you like? What can Mr. So-and-so do better? I've also seen surveys that have like a rating scale so that students can rate how much they thought their teacher cared about them, or how fair were the policies and the rules, or how hard was the class. These types of questions are actually really useful. However, I feel like they can be improved with follow-up questions for a high or low score. So you can put, if you answered a 1 or a 5, please explain. That way, if a student just decides to give you all 5s because they don't really want to really put the effort into thinking about it, now they have to write a reason why they gave you a 5. I also recently saw a 3-question survey that asked these 3 questions. What should the teacher start doing? What should the teacher stop doing? And what should the teacher continue doing? Now, I thought that these were really simple but powerful questions, and I think I'm going to incorporate these into future student surveys. So the big question that I've been asked a lot is, should these surveys be anonymous? Well, I think that depends. First, if you're simply asking what was helpful, or whether or not they need more help, you can have them write their name on it. It's not a big deal. If anything, it's going to help you guide your teaching so that you can give extra instruction to those that need it. There's really no risk on the student's part if they check off what they thought was and wasn't helpful, or what was easy or what was difficult. So, you want to think about the level of risk that they're going to be taking in terms of whether or not they're going to put their name. However, if you're asking them questions where they are going to reflect on your teaching, or on the classroom environment, or just the class in general, you're going to get the best responses with an anonymous survey, because students, they're going to be afraid of the repercussions of saying that they don't like your teaching style, or they think you're unfair. However, the more honest that they can be, in a respectful way, of course, the better it will be for your teaching. All right, so switching gears just a little bit, another type of feedback is from student data. Now, I know that there are a lot of teachers that hate data, but honestly, it really does help in terms of driving decisions in your teaching. So data serves as feedback because it tells you if what you're doing is or isn't working. And I've mentioned this many, many times before. In fact, I had an entire series dedicated to student data. So you can find that on episodes 22 to 25. So if you missed that, I highly suggest that you go back to that. In any case, this works best if you give a pretest or some kind of baseline assessment first. This is because you need a sense of what level your students are at before teaching a new skill. Then you proceed with the lessons and the activities, and also you make observations on how students react or interact with certain activities. That is really valuable feedback right there. When I'm trying a new activity that I've never done before, I watch like a hawk how students interact with the different components, and sometimes I have to stop them to clear up misunderstandings, and then I take notes on how to improve it for next time. So if there's a particular activity that the students really got stuck on or didn't really help them move forward, then I make a note so that I can fix that, and I'll teach it differently, or even sometimes omit it the next time that I teach it. And usually, I'm wondering if this happens to you, especially if you teach secondary, the first class that does the activity, they're the guinea pigs. And then all the other classes get to benefit from their mistakes. It just always happens. So in the middle of your unit, you're going to have ongoing checks for understanding and informal assessments that you give on the fly. This type of feedback is so crucial because it helps you know if you're on track or if you miss something in instruction. A lot of what I do successfully in the classroom is a result of making mistakes and fixing them. Always. Even when I use the lesson that somebody else gave me, I still have to refine how I deliver the lesson and the types of examples I give and analogies that I come up with for students. even how I rephrase explanations when students don't understand, and finally, how I have students work collaboratively. So it's always something that is a work in progress, but the only way that you can progress is if you use data along the way. So using data as feedback throughout the lesson is crucial to refining your practice. I mean, honestly, you have to constantly be looking for ways a lesson can be better, even while you're in the midst of teaching it. And a lot of times I'm writing little notes and I'm reminding myself for next year what to fix. You know, it's similar to a stand-up comedian or a performer. They have to read the crowd and adjust as necessary. In the same way, you should also read your students and do the same. I mean, if you're up there giving direct instruction and your students' eyes are glazing over, then you've probably talked for too long. I know that some teachers that think, oh, well, I'm not here to entertain them. But if even your most studious students are having a hard time staying focused, then you're wasting your breath. They're not retaining anything. Pivot and do something with that activity. Have them think, pair, share something that you just discussed. Have them teach each other what you just discussed. Have them do a snippet of an assignment that covers what you just discussed. That you have to read your students. That's some informal data right there that lets you know how you're doing as a teacher. And at the end of the unit, you tend to have a summative assignment or test. And you know, the before and this after data, oh my goodness, it tells you so much in terms of how well students understood the concept, as well as how you covered the material. If your students still haven't gotten it, then you should use that feedback to decide on how to proceed without getting too far behind. In terms of how to disseminate student surveys, you know, paper copies are fine. Sometimes teachers will use exit tickets. So they fill it out. You know, it's got to be a short survey if it's an exit ticket, and then they hand it to you on the way out. There's also obviously lots of ways to do this online with technology. So, you know, Google Forms is quite popular, and Microsoft has their own version called Microsoft Forms. And those are really easy ways to create surveys, and then it can automatically export that data into a spreadsheet, which I think is awesome. You can even use online quizzing sites like Kahoot or Quizlet for polls and feedback. So there's really no excuse to not do surveys. They don't have to take long. They could take 5 minutes maximum. You can even do one as a warm-up, or as I mentioned before, you know, like an exit ticket. But getting this ongoing feedback from your students and using student data along the way during a unit of study can really, really transform your teaching. If you're wondering how to make teaching easier, if you're wondering how to become better as a teacher, you have to use feedback and you have to be really reflective. And I mean really reflective. You can't just sit there and get defensive and think, you know, this doesn't apply to me. It's not fair. It's the students, it's the parents, it's the administrators. You have to look deep down inside and use this data and this feedback to guide your teaching. In fact, in my next episode, episode 49, I'm going to talk about the difficult discussion about how to take feedback. A lot of us are really, really good at giving feedback, but we're not that good at taking feedback or constructive criticism. And this is going to be the difference between you being an okay teacher and a great and happy and satisfied teacher. So I hope that you'll come back next week for that particular episode. So thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today. I know that you are busy, and I hope that if you have a chance, you'll take a minute to leave a rating and review for me. And I hope that you have a fabulous week.
Thanks for listening to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. Love this episode? Head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.